Hi, it's Bill from Recovery After Stroke. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to thank everyone who's been supporting the show. To those of you on Patreon, your contributions help me cover the cost of producing this podcast after more than 10 years of doing it on my own. If you're able to support the show in this way too, you can go to patreon.com/recoveryafterstroke to find out more. Thanks also to the people leaving reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, the YouTube commenters who keep the conversation alive, and everyone who has bought my book, The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened. Even those who stick with the ads, you're helping keep this show going for other survivors who need hope. Today's guest is Terry Gilstead. At just 37 and 6 months pregnant, she had a stroke that left her paralyzed on her right side and unable to speak. What followed was not only the birth of her son, but also decades of continuous recovery. A story of patience, persistence, and her unforgettable watch me spirit. And before we dive in, a big thank you to Banksia Tech for supporting this episode. They're the proud distributors of the Hansen Rehab Glove, so Rebo. This glove is designed to help stroke survivors improve hand function at home, whether you're early in recovery or years down the road. You'll hear more about it later in the episode. Terry Gilstead, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Tell me, what was life like before stroke for you?
Okay. I don't know if you can see it, but this page that I'm showing you it's a page of pictures that was of me before the stroke. And I was just in a new relationship with my current husband. And I was really big at skiing and doing things with my daughters. I was really good as far as I had real big drive. I was a type A personality. I really felt that I was ready to get into my master's.
So you wanted to get your master's in what field?
I was going to get my master's in administration and I was a person that liked to do really different things. And I was the first person in my school that was working with cooperative groups. And I had all my cooperative groups set up in my classroom, and it was working out really, really well. So I went home and was feeling like I had a headache, a migraine headache all day long. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, this is the time that I get to get my daughters down. Everything will be fine or whatever. And then I would go to bed and wake up in the morning with the headache gone. And it kind of didn't work out that way. So
what was causing the headache?
the headache was caused by my blood thickening up. I have antiphospholipid syndrome, which I never knew anything about until after the stroke. And the uh, the way it worked was something that it always gave me a migraine headache and probably a lot of just I had really blurry vision and had like wavy lines in front of my vision or whatever.
So how little were the children? You were 37. How little were the children?
The children in my class were 8 years old.
What about your
Oh,
children?
my children. Oh, okay. My oldest was almost, I think she was 9, and my middle daughter was, I think, 8. They're 14 and a half months apart. So, but that was the ages of my children. So then I woke up in the middle of the night thinking, something's not right about, all this stuff. And I said, and I woke up my husband and I said, would you please call my doctor and also call an ambulance because I think I'd better go in with this.
It has been 27 years.
Yes.
And you're still kind of living with the effects, the impact, the deficits that stroke created. on the day of the stroke, uh, what were your first thoughts when you were diagnosed as having had a stroke? Did you go through that process
I
in your mind?
I did not know that I had had a stroke. I remember going to the emergency room, being taken over to a CAT scan, having a CAT scan done. Nothing was unusual about it because I was, behaving like everybody else would behave, I guess. And then they took me back into the emergency room, and my doctor was there, and he said, he talked with the other people that were there and reading the scan, and they said it doesn't appear that she's gone through anything, which I, I was one of those people that never thought about a stroke or whatever. So I didn't realize that it would probably take a few hours for that to start showing up on the prints or whatever. So I was there. I was talking to a lady there in the room who was one of the mothers of one of my students at the time. And she was like, "Oh, how are you?" And I was like, "Oh, don't know what's going on." And da, da, da. And I asked her if I could go to the bathroom. And she said, "Why don't we give you a catheter first?" And I was like, "Okay, whatever that is or whatever." And I remember saying, "I really feel tired. I think I'm just going to go to sleep." And everybody was like, "Fine, go to sleep." And when I woke up the next morning, I was in the ICU, and my husband was beside. No, not yet. Not at the time. I woke up and I was in ICU at the hospital that I was at in Royal Palm Beach. And they were calling my husband from Shands. My husband had been in touch with my sister and her husband, who were at Shands Hospital, the teaching hospital there. And they decided that they were going to fly me up there. So we were waiting for the plane to land, and then I was going to be taken out. But I realized at that point in time, though, I couldn't talk to my husband. And my entire right side of my body was completely paralyzed. I mean, I could feel if somebody touched me, but I couldn't lift my arm up. I couldn't lift my leg up. My face was quite just very, very
Droopy.
desperately. Yes, very much. And so it was like, but nobody had told me at that time that I had had a stroke. So they flew me up to Shands, took me up and put me in the ICU at Shands. And it was like I didn't really notice that, I was like, "What's going on?" or whatever, but I couldn't say, somebody tell me what's going on because I couldn't get any words out. But it was a really interesting time because during that time I kept on going out, and that was when I would go out of my body and look down and see my body on
Wow.
this table. And I was sitting there thinking, this is strange, but this must be the time that I'm supposed to be going or whatever. But I've got a baby. Oh, I didn't tell everybody, but I was 6.5 months pregnant at the time. And I was sitting there saying, "What's going on with this? Just what's happening?" And they kept, just, and then I was like, all of a sudden, I felt the calm. I felt the most unbelievable calm moment. I can't even describe it. It's just so incredible. I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid of death. No, I'm not afraid of death, but I am afraid to die. So I was sitting there and I was thinking, I was the whole time this was happening, I had my complete thinking ability. And I was sitting there thinking, what's going on? And I think I'm supposed to be going up to God or whatever I'm going to be doing there, or whatever. I was like doing some Zen with my sister. My other sister was a Zen practitioner. And I thought, I don't think I want to be here. And I don't want to leave my husband just having to be with a woman that is just, I mean, it was like I was a half a person. And so I was sitting there thinking, okay, God, you're going to be able to take me. And then my sister, the doctor, came into the room and she said, Have you, oh, she said she was holding a picture. It was a sonogram of my child. And I was like, oh, and there was a baby in there that was waving his hand. And it was like, is this baby saying hello to me? This is wonderful. So I was sitting there saying, this is okay. It's going to be me and I'm going to be okay. And my son wasn't about to be born until January. He wasn't scheduled to be due until January. And this is like October 31st. And I was like, I think that he'll be okay. If I, have to pass away or whatever, they can deliver him. They'll take care of him. Everything will be fine. And um, then I would go out and I'd go back through this thing. And I was out of my body, but I was feeling like I was a part of an entire group. And I never thought about I always thought about we. And it was like, they say that when you die, you go out, you become one with the whole group of whatever we are, the beings that were up there. And he or my thing was I was sitting there saying, okay, it's okay. I'm going to die or whatever, but it's going to be all right because my husband's going to be there. Well, my parents both came. My sister came down. My other sister was there at the time. And I was just like, I was ready. I was going to go. I was, and then my sister said, you can't go right now. And I said, like, and she said, we have to stay and keep you here longer because the baby is not going to make it or whatever. And so we have to make you stay here. And so I thought, okay, maybe that's why God isn't taking me. I'm having to stay, wait until it's time to have the baby or whatever, and then I can die.
We'll be back with more of Terry's remarkable story in just a moment. I wanted to take a second to thank Banksia Tech, who are supporting this episode. They bring stroke survivors the Hansen Rehab Glove by Cerebo, a soft robotic glove that helps you retrain hand movement at home. It also helps retrain grip and flexibility. It's practical, it's effective, and it can make a real difference no matter where you are in your recovery. And the best part, you can order it right here in Australia, and Banksia Tech can ship it internationally too. I love being able to share tools like this with my listeners because they solve real problems that survivors face every day. Now let's get back to Terry's journey, including what it was like to return to the classroom with aphasia just months after her stroke.
And I was like, I got completely like, I really felt that I was going to be okay or whatever. And so I was in the ICU for 3 weeks, and they said, whatever you feel like doing, just go ahead and do it. And I thought, well, I wanted to die, and so then I thought, okay, I'm not going to die. I'm going to have this baby or whatever. And they said, you have 3 weeks that you're going to stay here at Shan's. And I thought, okay. And I knew I couldn't talk. So I thought that's 1 week for me to get back my power of speech because I was known as the mouth of the South. And they arranged to have me move down here to St. Mary's Hospital. That was the only hospital that they had down here at the time that had a pediatric neonatologist.
Wow.
And they said, it was okay because I could be with her or whatever, that she would be around, whatever it all started taking place. But so we got moved down, and I was put in a room with another woman, and the lady, I don't know, she had something different going on with her, but it was like, and I was sitting there, just crying the whole time. I couldn't control my emotions at all. I was just crying, 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 crying. And so they decided to put me into a room by myself. And so I went into the room by myself, and I was just, lying in the bed and just, wondering what was going to happen. And they brought me a book, and it was one of those books like a not a Harlequin, but some type of a book that I would just be reading or whatever. And I could read it. I could read it to myself, but then I couldn't remember what I had read. So it was like I always had to start over again, and I'd be able to read those pages faster and then go a few more pages and get tired. And that, it was a very, and I don't remember what the book was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that,
Wow. What a
that
journey.
was,
So
it was interesting.
you're in ICU, you're 6 months pregnant, and then
Hmm.
you eventually came out of ICU. How long did it take for
Yes,
you
I
to
did.
come out of ICU?
They kept me in ICU up at Shands for a week. And then they put me in, oops, excuse me, they put me in a room by myself that it was like I was, it was not a regular hospital room, but it was a room where they had like a step up from that. They would know that I was in there, and I wasn't a person who could speak to them. So people came in and spoke with me a lot. So it was really strange. They were trying to get me to talk, and I was getting a little bit better, but it was still
Mm,
like, it's very strange to be a person who is used to be such a very fast talker or whatever,
mhm.
to have to sit there and think, okay, I'm going to answer this question that they just put to me or whatever, but I have to figure out how to get the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And my vocal cords and all were halfway paralyzed or whatever, so that was a little bit more difficult. But at the same time, it was like I was sitting there and I was trying to do the physical therapy, trying to do the occupational therapy, having a wonderful time. I do everything with my right side, and they tell me, okay, now, with my left side. Then my right side, I couldn't do anything. It was like, they had me standing up. I'd stand up and they'd have me throwing this basketball. And then they wanted me to throw it with my right arm. And I was like, that's not going to work or whatever. So they had decided to monitor me. And so I guess probably, it was probably maybe the middle of November that I had gotten back down there or whatever. And so they were monitoring me with a thing. And I thought, oh, you're not going to put the groupie stuff on, anything. It was a sonogram. And she said, are you feeling strange? And I was like, no. And she said, because you're like having contractions every 4 minutes. And they said, so I got to be discharged from the rehab,
Hmm.
taken down, had to be admitted to the maternity ward. They took me in, gave me enough medicine that I couldn't see straight, much less try to talk or whatever. But it took them about 24 hours to get the labor stopped. And then they said, okay, you're okay. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So I had to get discharged from the maternity, taken back up to the rehab, admitted to the rehab. And I was like, oh, brother. Then I was okay for a while. And then it was like, I think it was probably the beginning of December, and I was really not making progress. I could start rolling myself around using just my left side and my left foot to roll around the floor up there in a wheelchair. But they always would say, okay, it's time to check you again. And everything was fine until one day it wasn't. And the girl goes, you're in labor again. You're having contractions again every couple of minutes or whatever. And I thought, this is ridiculous. So had to go back down, had to come back up. It was all crazy.
So were you um, in early labor at some stage? Did you go
Uh,
into early labor?
uh, I was in early labor, but I think I wasn't um, dilated or whatever. People
Ah,
check down there,
okay.
but I was dilating to
Contracting.
about 2 centimeters, but I couldn't get to like 10 or whatever.
I hear
And
you.
they didn't want me to go to 10. So
Okay. So then that paused for a little while,
yes,
and then you went back up to the rehab ward, continued your rehab, and then you went
exactly.
into labor again.
Yes.
Okay. And
So
when you went into labor and finally had the baby,
mhm.
it was induced Natural birth, C-section, what was the?
My doctor said they that I would not be able to have a natural birth as far as the feeling it all and pushing the baby out and things like that. I'd had two all natural births with the first two kids I had. And then it was, I guess they were asking me, it was in the early weeks of December. And they said that they could tell that my baby was going to be probably 8 pounds or so right then. And it was like, I haven't ever had one that large or whatever. And they said they were going to induce me. So it had to be discharged from the rehab unit again, readmitted to the ward again for the baby. And then I guess I went down there about 10 o'clock. They started the Pitocin drips, everything else. And my husband was there and my doctor was there. But then he was like, no matter what happens, when you feel like you've got to push, don't push. And you just have to let us know somehow that you've got to push or whatever. So by that afternoon, about 4 o'clock, my son was ready to be born. It was so funny. He wanted to stay in the womb while he was like, it wasn't his time. Like, I mean, he wasn't coming out or whatever. And I was like, come on, you've been there so many times before. Anyway, but then he was able to be born by forceps delivery, and
Okay.
it was gorgeous. My doctor delivered beautiful baby boy or whatever,
Yeah.
and I was just like, oh, this is great. And then it was like there was this real a bunch of stuff going on,
Yeah.
and my mother came in, and my mother-in-law came in, and my daughters came in, and
Awesome.
everybody was looking at this baby or whatever. And but I was watching them do all this stuff, and I hadn't given up my thoughts, and I thought, now I can die. Now I can die.
Oh,
And because I didn't feel like I was anything. I mean, it was just like I had been a whole type A personality. I had so much stuff going on or whatever. Now it was like I've done my duty here. I've had the baby. So I'm going to be able to go ahead and die. And it
okay.
was like, I was not scared
Spoiler
at
alert.
all.
Spoiler
Uh,
alert. You didn't die.
yeah,
So the baby's born. You didn't die.
yes,
You guys
I didn't die.
eventually went home, and you're definitely got used to understanding that being a mother the previous two times you were fit and well, full bodily functions, everything worked well. And then
Mhm.
you went home, I imagine at some stage with a baby, and also half of your body not able to work properly and move properly.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
what was it like to go home under those conditions with a brand new baby after the deficits that stroke left you with?
Yes. I believe that it was okay for me to go home that way because I already had two babies that I'd had all my faculties about me or whatever. And I had my husband and my 9 year old and my 8 year old daughter. And I thought, this is okay. This is all right. I didn't have to pick them up, or I didn't have to change the diapers, or I didn't have to do this and
Okay.
that, and the other. And my husband had moved all their stuff downstairs. We were in an upstairs,
Yep.
downstairs house at the time.
Part of it was he had to go back to rehab
I know.
before it came up.
Yeah, you will. Um, my husband just wanted me to let you know that I was in there and I had the baby with me for a week, and they'd bring him to me and I could like hold him in my arm,
Hmm.
even though I wasn't able to like
Move
do
it.
anything with my arm, and then I could feed him with my with the
Hmm.
bottle or whatever. And then after a week, he was discharged. He was able to go home, and I had to stay there for another month. So
Wow.
it was like, so
So
all this crazy.
baby's at home,
Mm-hmm.
you're in rehab for another month. Are you still
Mm-hmm.
thinking I should be dying now or I need to die? Or did you go back to I need to get home?
I got I was hurting the whole time after I had the baby or whatever. I had a hematoma inside of me that was the size of a grapefruit,
Related
a
to the
large
pregnancy?
grapefruit. Hmm. And just having the baby or whatever, I was on heparin, which is the blood thinning
Uh,
medication or whatever.
yeah.
So um, I was doing everything was all right or whatever. And then it was like, I couldn't stand this. I couldn't stand just the thought of having to just go through my life with all this pain and stuff.
So
So
that
the doctor
is
came.
that the non-acceptance part? You didn't accept the stroke that had happened to you, the condition you were in.
Exactly.
What? Yeah.
Exactly. And I was so upset about it. And all I wanted to do was die. And I thought,
You were
all I
upset
have to do.
about your condition? Were you upset about that it happened to you? What were you upset about?
I was upset about my condition because I couldn't talk to people. I could not, do the things that I wanted to do with the baby.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I was just like, it's going to be all right or whatever. Well, the doctor came in and said, "Oh, we'll get you in the uh, surgery for another day or so." And I said, "Why not today?" And I was in the room to do it within the hour. So that was when they found out I had the hematoma
Uh,
inside me or whatever, and they got it all taken care of and were fixing all this stuff. And I
what
was
was
like,
the
no.
hardest part to accept though? Was it the fact that you couldn't be with your baby? Was it that you couldn't speak? Was it that you couldn't move your body? Which was the hardest part?
Yeah, I think the hardest part was not being able to move my body and not being able to speak
Yeah.
at the same time. And then when I came out of the surgery and I felt better, then I realized that God was not ready for me yet. It was like, for some reason, He was just saying, "This is not your time." And I was very, very upset. And I think I did not communicate the way I would communicate with God usually for about 7 years.
Uh-huh.
And
So
it was
you were
just like
very upset with God
very upset,
for having
very upset.
put you in this situation.
Yes. So, or for not taking me. I was like, "Why did
Ah,
you leave me? Why did you leave me down here?"
okay.
So, but then I knew that I was going to have to go back to school for the next school year or whatever. So I had from, I think I got out January 20th, which was Bill Clinton's inauguration day or whatever. And I went home and it was like, was going around and I was very depressed. And at the time, I didn't know that it's supposed to be depression is a very, very common thing that most stroke survivors have a lot of. And at the time, it was like, I just can't be around here. I just can't do all this stuff or whatever. But then my husband and my mother-in-law, who was also my assistant principal at school, said that, I had to go and walk every morning. And I had a Hemi walker and then a cane. And then
All
when
right.
I was back at school, I was able to start walking pretty much
Let's
with
go
my
back a little bit. Let's go back a little bit.
regular.
Let's go back.
Okay.
You, you're an amazing guest, by the way. I love the
Oh,
information that you have, and it's probably my responsibility to get it out of you at the right moment. So
okay.
so it's all good. Now I want to go back to that part. You're upset with God. God didn't take you. Your relationship
Mhm.
with God for 7 years was not the same as it was before. Now, what
Exactly.
was your relationship like before you had that experience with God? Did you have were you going to church? Were you religious? What kind of a relationship did you have?
I had it's more Zen than Buddhist or Christian or whatever. I mean, I knew that everybody was supposed to be celebrating their own gods in their own way, but we all have one God. I mean, it's like, it's
Yeah.
whoever my God is can be, your God. is in another
They
religion
might
or
have a
whatever.
different
So
name. They might look different on pictures, but we all are one. We all kind of have one God, so to speak. And
yes,
your connection was more like a spiritual connection than a
yes, it was. Yes, it
directly
was.
religious type of connection.
Exactly. It's like I had read the Bible. I had gone through a lot of books about Buddhism or whatever, and everything that I was touching spoke to me, but it was like, I'm not any of those. I'm
Mm.
just me.
Okay, so
It,
what happened in the next 7 years? How did you like? Did you actually remain mad? Like, did you have conversations like, could you have done this to me and all that type of stuff? How did you express that anger or madness at God?
the very first probably months after I got out and was doing my thing, walking around the neighborhood with my cane or whatever, it would be like me telling him, why have you done this? Why did you do this to me? And then I thought, well, I know you didn't do it to me, but you had a way of keeping me better than the way I am or whatever. A very positive, upbeat person. And so having the depression was just like
Mm.
it was just
I'll
weighing
wait.
down on me.
I'll wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
also, go ahead.
I was going to say like, and were you feeling sorry for yourself? Like, were you doing like the pity party type thing?
Yeah, I was. And I was like, how am I doing this? And then I would sit there and say, I'm not doing this. I'm just absolutely not doing things. I went back to school the following the following August. And when I got back in school or whatever, it was like, I've got to talk. I have to do this. I am an elementary school teacher, and there have to be 7 points of the day that I'm doing math and science and reading and dinner. And it was like, okay, I went back to my thinking and I thought, you know, I, I was so upset with myself for being so upset about God or whatever. And I thought, well, I can't be that way.
So not only were you upset at God, you were upset at
Yeah.
yourself for being upset at
Yeah.
God. That's a lot of upset going on there.
Here it was. It was a lot.
Goodness.
But then I thought, well, I'm going back to school in August. So I thought I'm going to make sure I get back to school and I'm going to have everything that I have to say for the entire day written out. And I realized I couldn't type on my computer anymore, not with two hands, but with one hand. I did it like it was okay. So
Mm.
every day I would get prepared to go to this room. Oh, first of all, I went to the in second grade. This was my third year teaching second grade, or not second, but third grade. And I was like, this is just strange. And they said, well, we're starting something in this school called um, inclusive education or whatever. And I thought, all right, I can do inclusion. And they let me go with a girl that I knew or whatever, another teacher who was a special ed teacher. And it was going to be wonderful because I would have really smart kids for half of my class. And then the other half of my class were the kids that were SLD, specific learning disabilities, but they could have all sorts of information like they were not able to get their speech out properly, or they weren't able to write things down or whatever. And so I had to learn all the different ways that they would be learning, and thought I have to teach from their visual, their auditory, and their kinesthetic, what they would do so much. And so I would sit there and write down my lesson for spelling and my lesson for, and each day it was like I would stand up there and having books in my hands or whatever was pretty much normal. But it was like, okay, this is my script. And if I can't figure out what I'm supposed to say, I just got to look at my script again. And so I had been doing the stuff that would help me talk very much. And also, my husband would take my son and my daughters out, and I would be the only one left in the house. And I would scream at the top of my lungs, just scream to help strengthen
Your
my
voice.
lungs. And so it was really
So did
an okay.
so that is how long after you came back from hospital and you were at home?
Let's see, I came back from the hospital in January, and the following August, the middle of August, I went
So
to
in
teaching.
8 months after everything that you went through, you went back to work
Yes, I did.
and you taught at a school, even though you were dealing with aphasia.
And I had my notes there, and I knew that I would be able to talk, like, I put information on the board and I could talk about that information. And I'd have like they'd be talking about, we're going to do spelling or something, and I'd had everybody stand up in the class, and they would have to raise their arm up,
Yeah.
out, cross, and so I was still bringing my therapies that I was having in the hospital
Into your classroom.
Well, that was exactly right.
So did that help you? So what role did going back to school play in your recovery? How did that not I understand like what you did and how you did it and all that kind of stuff, but what happened with the I don't want to be here anymore? Did that go away when you were back at school? How did that change?
That went away. It had probably gone away back when I went home, probably by March or April. It was like, okay, I'm going to be here for a long time. I'm definitely not going to be going back into the la la land that I went into. But it was like, I was not ready to give up. But I was able to teach, like from my notes or whatever, for about half a day in the beginning. And then by 11:30 each day, my voice would start going out or whatever. And that's when Linda would take over, my friend.
Okay. So your assistant was there to take over and support you with your recovery. Well, that's very, very useful and helpful to help transition somebody back into work. Was there a particular person that supported you more than anybody, kind of somebody that was your mentor, your guide? Who was it that sort of stepped up that you didn't expect that really impacted you in a positive way?
My husband. My husband was probably the most supportive and the most positive thing that was around me at the time. My sister, my doctor sister from Gainesville or whatever, called me one morning, and she was talking, and I said something about, I think I'm going to be trying to go back to work in August. And she was like, well, you probably are going to say that, but you're probably not going to be able to make it back. And I was in there going, excuse me? It was like every time somebody said something to me, like, you're not going to get this. If you don't have it back by the time 6 months have passed, just don't expect to get it back. And I was like, tell me, and I will get it back. Just so
I love
it
it.
was like that was the point where it was her having to say that, and
that was your turning point. Was that your
exactly
big moment?
Exactly.
So your biggest frustration was having something to say and then forgetting or not being able to say it and get it.
Not being able to get it out. Yeah, it was horrible. But I have to admit, it made me a better listener.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a good talker, but I was not as good a listener as I had to become.
What about when did the shift happen with God? Like what happened and you kind of felt okay with God?
I think it was about 7 years till I finally, somebody could say something to me and I was able to respond, but slowly. And it took me probably about that entire first 7 years for me to be able to initiate a conversation. And I thought, and it was just such a relief that I was the person that was able to say hello before somebody else said hello to me or something.
So it took
So
7 years for you to get to that stage of continuous recovery, things improving, things changing, difficulties, um, deficits, problems, all sorts of stuff that you're going through, and yet they're still experiencing a recovery after 7 years. You still were getting better
oh,
and better and better, and
I am
noticing,
I'm still experiencing recovery after 32 years. It'll be
yeah,
33 years by
yeah.
this Halloween.
And looking back, how have you changed? What strengths have you discovered in yourself that you didn't know you had, for example?
I discovered that I have a lot of patience, which I didn't think I would ever be able to say that, but I realized that when I was taken out of the talking world for a while, it gave me enough time to think and to relate to all the people that were around me and to my children and their friends or whatever. And I thought I had to learn patience, I think, as one of my really good skills. And I still, I was really disappointed because everybody was doing certain things where you could take these tests and it would be, you know, like a 100 question test or whatever, and had to put all the answers down. I couldn't take tests like that anymore because I could not remember things that I would study for the night before. I wouldn't be able to do anything. My thing was to sit back and fake it till you make it type. I was able to write down all the words that I would say, and then I had the scripts every day. And
So you
after
had to
that,
find another way of getting through things.
exactly. And
Adjust. Did,
all of
did
a
you have
sudden,
to like a like a like adapt?
yes, yes, had to adapt in a lot of ways. A
Yeah,
lot of ways.
yeah. So what's life like now, 32 years later? Daily living. Did you mention something about some deficits having got worse recently or something? What's happened?
Yes. As I got closer to 70, I started feeling like I was going off balance physically. And I have been told that I should be using my cane much more than I was using my cane. And I have been using my cane
Have you been
as a
told
result.
have you been told you should go back to rehab and do some physical?
I have been. That is one of the things that I could tell any of your listeners or whatever.
So
What I,
you have gone back to rehab. You still do
yes,
rehabilitation. You still
yes,
follow up with all of that stuff, trying to
yes,
make sure that you stay on top of the balance issues,
exactly.
etc.
Yes,
And does it improve? Did you find improvement
it
once you went
does.
back to rehab?
It does.
Yeah.
It definitely improves. I usually get it for about 6 weeks at a time, and I will learn all the exercises. I use the exercise balls. I use the exercise bands. I use the stairs that they walk up, and then you turn and walk down, and just everything that they could put me through. I would have to go back, do them again, and then each time I get strong enough, and when I go out, I'd have to be able to come home and do them again.
Yeah.
But I decided that it's probably going back to the rehab place that I went to the last time is probably a good place to be, just to
Yeah.
help me get my stuff back.
Good move. Good move. So you're this is probably more about me than you. Like I would have
Okay.
expected, I would have expected that by the time I got to 32 years post stroke, I'm done talking about it. I'm done rehabilitating. I'm done all of that. It's just like because I'm only 14 years post stroke. So I would have
Yeah.
thought by then I
Yeah.
get by the time I get to 32 years, who needs to talk about it? However, you still found my podcast somehow. You still reached
Yes.
out. You still felt that there was important for you to join the podcast and share your story. Why is that? Why is it necessary to still, after all these years, reach out, to the community and share your story?
Because I realized that I went from being very able to being very disabled. And it happened like overnight. And I was having such a difficult time getting it back. I was so mad at God. I was like, how could he have done this to me? Da, 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 da. And then when I changed my attitude, and I was ready to say, okay, I'm going to do this. And they'd say, well, you're not going to be able to do that. And I was like, watch me, watch. I get the cat.
Hello, cute.
Um, say hello, yes. I was always there, though. It's like somebody would say to me, you're not going to be able to do that ever. And I said, watch me, just watch me. And at 70, I am still getting things back. It amazes me. And don't ever, ever, ever think that you will not get something back. I may not be able to play kickball, but I can watch the kids play and let everybody know you're out. Yeah. But I just had to adapt to ways that I could do it. I could be a part of what everybody was doing, but in my own special way.
Yeah.
So
what a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for reaching out,
you're
overcoming
welcome.
all the challenges you needed to overcome to get on the podcast. I know we had a few technical problems and we
Yeah.
had Zoom issues and all that kind of stuff. So I really appreciate your persistence and your perseverance. It's
Very
lovely
good.
to meet you. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me on.
That was Terry Gilstead, and what an inspiring conversation. Her story is proof that after stroke, recovery never really ends. That even decades later, there's still progress to be made. If you found hope in Terry's story, remember to subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app so you don't miss future episodes. And of course, you can pick up my book, The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened, at recoveryafterstroke.com/book. A final thank you to Banksia Tech for supporting this episode and for making the Hansen Rehab Glove by Cyribo available to stroke survivors in Australia and internationally. Most importantly, thank you for being here. By listening, commenting, and sharing, you're helping build a community where survivors don't feel alone. Remember to keep moving forward. Recovery is a journey, and you're not walking it alone.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.